Hi everybody, welcome back to my channel. Today we're going to talk a little bit about perception. So it's kind of a big topic, but we're going to try and keep it, as short as we can, just to see if we can help you when you are struggling with some stuff that perceptions can sometimes skew. So first of all, when we talk about our perception, what are we trying to say? We are trying to say that it's from our perspective. So each individual person has their own perspective. And I learned that from just growing up in a family. So if there's a family of 5 people, and let's say there are 3 kids, and every child is having a different experience of their parents, the mom and the dad. And sometimes one child has a good experience and therefore a good perspective, and one child can have a not such good experience, and therefore perspective is different too. So just understanding, so the parents think that they are parenting the same to all of the 3 kids, but the 3 kids are all having a different experience. So that just to help you understand where these things come from. They come from a very, very young age, okay? So from a very young age, we all have this thing that we call our own perspective on life, and therefore creates a perception. Okay, so when you understand that, it can really help you a lot. We have to be able to understand that my perception creates my perspective, therefore creates my experience. Somebody else grew up perhaps in that same household, had a different perception, different perspective, different experience. So then now comes the question of what is truth then? Again, okay, so truth, poor truth, oh my God, I got a big job because everybody wants truth to be their truth. But truth is not your perception of it. Truth just is. Like for example, there are laws, okay, in the universe, like law of gravity. That's the truth. What goes up has to come down. Nobody can say it's not a truth. But when it comes to our perspective of truth, sometimes it's not really a truth. It's just the way that we see it. And I'll help you a little bit further with this. Why am I talking about perspectives? Because I believe that we are powerful enough to change anything that we want in our life, including the past experiences. Okay? Oh, now many people will say, wow, how can you do that? Past experiences, exactly what I said in the beginning. If you were brought up in a household, 2 other siblings, mother and father, and your experience was not so good, I would like to say, if your experience was not so good, can we talk about how you perceived what happened? Number 1, in the first 6 years of our lives, they are probably the most vulnerable because we really need our parents or whoever's taking care of us for our survival. If we don't have that help, we will not survive. So think about a 3-year-old, for example, like tiny, right? So when you're a 3-year-old and you see adults and they're huge, big, like gods. So if they're just having a bad day, now that you're an adult, you can understand it. Maybe they're having a bad day, maybe they're screaming at each other, but it doesn't mean anything bad. But you as a 3-year-old are having this perspective or the perception that something not good is happening or your safety is at stake, okay? So then your perception of that will be negative. That's what I'm talking about. So a lot of things in our life, we have made up our minds that that's how it is, but we never revisited our perception on that story. And also how old you were when you made up that story, how vulnerable you were. And that's why you will find a lot of people actually also avoid their families. Because when you were so young and you created these perceptions and perspectives of people and things, and now when you're older, you don't even know that you're running on that same story. All you know is you want to avoid them. But you made up that story when you were very, very young, and perhaps it wasn't the truth of what you saw. So I'm not trying to say that people didn't experience what they experienced. I'm kind of asking you to, if you're not happy in your life because you created some perspective on something, your perception of it created a perspective that's now creating you some pain and suffering. All I'm saying is that you have the power within you to revisit your perception. That's what I'm trying to say. It's not to take anything away if something not so good happened to you, because believe me, all of us have had experiences where we felt traumatized and we felt unsafe. But if you are willing to go back to that time when you created that perception, perhaps it can help you to create some freedom in your life. So, okay, what are we trying to do? Just trying to live your best life. So if some trauma is holding you back from doing that, then I would recommend you can revisit that. Okay, revisit that in a very safe environment, and then also revisit your perception of it and ask yourself, was it really like that? Is it really a truth, like the truth like gravity? And I would say from all the people that I've worked with, 9 out of 10 times, it wasn't the truth, it was their perception. And when they change their perception, for example, when you become a parent yourself and you're trying to be the best friend that you can be, and sometimes we fail, okay? And then now you can understand your parents better. Because you can't understand the parent when you're not a parent. So it helps you to say to yourself, okay, maybe I saw that wrong. Maybe she or he, mom or dad, they were trying to do the best that they could at the time. So why we're talking about perception, again, I'm doing these little talks to help us to understand that we have the power within ourselves to shift anything. If something is creating pain and suffering in your life, you are not a victim of that you can do something about it. That's your power, that's your birthright. So the talk today is really just to show you, if you are not aware of it, that your perception creates your reality. And if you don't like the reality, that you can go back and change your perception. It's like when you look at something and then when you change your perception of what you're looking at, that thing you're looking at changes, because you are the most powerful person in the universe. So understanding that is going to help you to move forward in a life of creating more freedom for yourself, creating more love, acceptance, compassion. Those are the things that I'm hoping people will have more and generate more in their life, just from having the understanding of what's actually going on when we're talking about these topics. So perception is a very big thing. So I always say to people, if you want to be free in your life, if you really, really, truly want to be free, then you have to take responsibility. And it comes back to that thing. I am responsible for how I perceive things. And perhaps the way I perceived it wasn't the truth. If I can only get myself to that point of understanding that, okay, maybe I didn't see that quite right. When you change your perception, the thing you look at changes. And that's where your power lies. So basically today, that's all I wanted to share with you, is understanding a little bit about where your perception comes from. Most of our perceptions that we're still struggling with actually in our adult life usually comes from that first 6 years, where we were the most vulnerable, because without the adults in our life we will not survive. And like I said, we are so tiny and adults are so big, and anything can traumatize us. Like something that now we know as adults, if two people are just having a few harsh words, they don't mean anything by it, but if you're a little child, then you can be traumatized from that. So that's also our responsibility to revisit and to say, perhaps I didn't see that the way it truly was. And when I change my perception, then I change my life. And so now moving forward, because the other thing that we do is, when you have a traumatic event, we kind of like keep it buried. And we talked a little bit about this in past YouTube talks. So we kind of keep that because we don't want to show that. It's like it becomes a vulnerability because you don't want to show something, negative about yourself. So you're holding it and you just kind of layered things over it. And so the problem lies that you're always going to attract those same things. Okay, that's going to trigger that. So when you go back to the root of why you have that vulnerability, you can go back, I think a couple of weeks ago we had a vulnerability talk. When you go back to the root of that, and you can also actually see how your perception came into play there as well. So all we're doing here is just trying to help you to understand that you have a perception, to understand that your perception comes from your vulnerabilities, from your fears, and perhaps sometimes from your traumas. And if you're willing to revisit them, to take responsibility for them, at least 50% when there's other people involved, then you can shift that fear into, freedom and love for yourself, for your life. And that's all we hoping to do with these little talks here on YouTube, is just to help people to understand that we create things, and therefore we have an outcome of those same things. So if you don't like the outcome anymore, then you can go and change it. If you want to learn a little bit more, for example, let's say you can shift things on your own, I also offer a SRT masterclass where I go through the 12 tools of my book, and we go through a lot of these perceptions and triggers. And so if you really want to work with me one-on-one, there's an opportunity for that. I'll leave the link in the bio there. And even if you want to work one-on-one, reach out. And we also have, let's say if you don't have time to commit to a one-on-one, there's also the self-directed course. I'm going to leave the link in the bio for you, but definitely if this resonates with you, you can take any of these 3 options that I've just given you, and I can help you. So I hope you enjoyed that today. Please, if there's any comments, you can always comment and I can always reply to you. If you haven't done it yet, subscribe, click the button here, and I will see you again next week. Thank you so much for showing up here and for listening.